It begins with the sun, merciless and absolute. Hanging high over the African savanna, it bleaches the world in a glare so intense that the horizon seems to shimmer with illusions. The grasses have wilted into brittle straw, rustling faintly in the bone-dry breeze. Dust coats everything. The hide of elephants, the flanks of wildebeest, even the leaves of the acacias curling into themselves as if in defense. For days the land has gone without rain. The rivers have shriveled into sluggish threads, and the seasonal waterholes, those shallow bowls of survival, have begun to recede, drawing thirsty life toward their shrinking promise. But not all life. Some predators thrive when the landscape tightens. The crocodiles, ancient and inert, lie half buried in mud or motionless beneath the surface, their nostrils and eyes the only betrayal of their presence. The water may appear still, but it breathes, and that breath belongs to killers. Here in this elemental arena, thirst is a trap. And for the animals that come to drink, each step closer to the water's edge becomes a wager between life and death. Across the dry plain, a herd of impalas approaches the pool with disciplined hesitation. Their flanks twitch, ears flicking toward unseen signals, hooves tapping softly against the cracked earth. They are not foolish. They know the rules of this place. Some stay back, heads high, scanning the reeds and ripples. Others inch forward, driven by the unbearable dryness in their mouths, nostrils flaring to catch the scent of hidden danger. The water glistens, dark and opaque, its surface unbroken. It's the illusion of safety that kills. Without warning, the surface erupts. A wedge-shaped head bursts from the shallows, jaws wide and eyes locked forward. There is no time for the impala to leap. In a spray of muddy water, the crocodile clamps down, dragging the struggling animal into the deep like a puppet yanked off stage. Panic fractures the herd. Dust and hooves scatter in every direction as the pool swallows the violence back into itself. The water returns to stillness. The ambush is complete in less than 5 seconds. Crocodiles are among the most efficient ambush predators on the planet. Their hunting strategy isn't based on endurance or even pursuit. It is pure physics and patience. They rely on explosive muscle strength, capable of launching their entire body out of the water with a burst generated by their massive tail. They strike with over 3,000 pounds per square inch of bite force, enough to crack bone, shatter limbs, and hold fast even against large prey. Their success depends not on frequency, but on timing, and the waterhole during drought becomes their stage. It's not only impala who fall victim. Zebras, wildebeest, even elephants have suffered attacks. Calves are especially vulnerable, wading in with curiosity or collapsing at the edge from heat exhaustion. For crocodiles, this is not just a meal. It's opportunistic survival tuned by 200 million years of evolution. They have adapted to go months without feeding if necessary, conserving energy while positioning themselves in the most productive kill zones. The fewer the watering spots, the better the odds. Drought doesn't hurt crocodiles, it enhances them. Lions, too, have learned to exploit the thirst of their prey. Unlike crocodiles, they do not use the water itself, but the routines it creates. In regions like the Okavango Delta or Kruger National Park, lions often stalk paths leading to waterholes, knowing that prey species develop fixed travel routes out of habit and necessity. The predators will wait downwind in tall grasses, gauging the movement of zebra or kudu, choosing the weakest, the last in line, or the distracted. Sometimes they will even coordinate, with one lion flushing the herd while another waits ahead. It's not the water that kills, but the thirst that betrays. In East Africa's Tarangire and Serengeti regions, leopards stake out elevated positions above stream beds that shrink into puddles as the dry season wears on. With powerful limbs and low silhouettes, they ambush antelope from overhanging trees, crashing down with silent fury. Even cheetahs, normally reliant on open speed and daylight hunts, sometimes hover near waterholes at dawn, taking advantage of early morning drinkers too groggy or weak to respond quickly. The longer the land goes without rain, the more predictable the behavior of prey becomes, and predictability is fatal. This entire system is shaped not by the abundance of water, but by its scarcity. Animals that are normally alert and evasive begin to make mistakes. They linger too long. They return at the same time each day. They drink with eyes closed, with heads down. And predators, whether submerged, stalking, or waiting, are calibrated to exploit those mistakes with ruthless efficiency. One of the most unsettling dynamics of this cycle is that prey animals often know the risk. They have seen family members taken. They pause at the same spots where others vanished. But thirst overrides fear. This is a biological imperative, a trade-off written into their DNA. Hydration must come before safety because without water death is certain anyway. It's a gamble many lose, but few can afford not to take. From an ecological perspective, this grim rhythm plays a vital role. Waterholes serve as compression points in the food web. They bring together multiple species, herbivores, carnivores, scavengers, and even insects, into a dynamic and often violent convergence. Bones litter the banks. Vultures wheel above. Hyenas lurk nearby to snatch what the crocs leave behind. It is both a congregation of life and a celebration of death. As the camera pans over the scorched savanna, closing in on a lone buffalo calf stepping toward the shrinking pool, the patterns repeat once more. What appears to be survival is sometimes only the beginning of another kill. The surface glints with promise, but beneath it, the predator waits, silent, still, and ready. In the African wild, water may give life, but it demands a price. In a sun-seared corner of northern Australia, the tide retreats slowly from the mangrove flats, leaving behind a mirror-like sheet of brackish water. The surface is smooth as glass, reflecting the pale blue sky and skeletal silhouettes of trees rising from the mud. There's no wind, no sound, just the muffled squelch of crabs burrowing in the shallows and the faint ticking of cicadas somewhere deep in the reeds. At a glance, it's a peaceful scene, a lazy estuary at low tide, empty and quiet. But beneath that still skin, something ancient is waiting. A ripple breaks the symmetry, faint and brief, then gone, barely perceptible. But it didn't come from wind. It came from muscle, controlled, deliberate, slow. A pair of eyes break the surface, horizontal and unmoving, their vertical pupils dilated despite the sun. A saltwater crocodile, half a ton of armored lethality, floats invisibly just beneath the water's edge. The nose and eyes are positioned precisely atop the skull for this reason alone, to stay submerged and breathe without revealing form. It doesn't swim. It drifts, propelled by micro-movements of the tail, allowing the current to do the rest. This is the genius of crocodilian design. Stillness is not laziness, it's strategy. Every twitch, every movement betrays a location, so the crocodile becomes a sculpture of patience. Its scaly skin mimics the broken reflection of tree trunks and reeds. Its eyes reflect sky. Even the pressure of its submerged body is calculated to keep its bulk from disturbing the water column too much. To the fish, birds, or mammals approaching for a drink, the predator isn't just invisible. It has merged with the environment itself. In Africa, the Nile crocodile uses the same principle in slow-moving rivers. They park themselves near submerged logs or under overhangs, where light and shadow create visual noise that helps mask the head. Their skin, a muddy armor of ridges and pitted scales, refracts light irregularly, diffusing outlines even in clear water. In this way, the crocodile turns physics into camouflage, weaponizing the way light bends and ripples scatter through aquatic environments. It doesn't need to chase, it only needs to vanish until the exact moment it explodes. When the moment comes, everything happens at once. The launch is hydraulic. Stored energy in the tail is released in a coiled whip of pure muscle, generating a forward burst so fast the water breaks into a concussive fan around the predator's snout. The jaws, hinged at a devastating angle, snap open with almost no resistance, because crocodiles don't rely on jaw-opening muscles. Instead, they depend on closing force, delivered through some of the strongest bite pressure in the animal kingdom. Over 3,000 pounds per square inch crushed down on whatever enters the mouth. A bird, a gazelle leg, a monkey that leaned too far. The initial strike is not to kill, but to secure. The killing comes later. What follows is the signature move, the death roll. Once clamped down, the crocodile spins its entire body violently, twisting prey off balance, breaking bones and tearing flesh through centrifugal force. In deep enough water, it may drag the victim under, waiting for them to drown before dismembering them. In shallower pools, it might bash the prey against submerged rocks or thrash them into submission. The entire sequence is so fast that to most observers it appears as a sudden splash and a disappearance. But what's even more astonishing is the control. Despite their bulk, crocodiles have a near supernatural sense of spatial awareness. Using dome pressure receptors, tiny sensory organs dotting their jaws, they can detect the faintest disturbance in the water, from a single drop to a bird's footstep on the surface. These receptors, known as integumentary sensory organs, are more precise than sonar in close quarters. They allow the croc to hunt at night in murky water, even blindfolded, responding to ripples in total darkness. A moving shadow in the moonlight can mean a kill. In the Amazon and Orinoco basins, caimans operate on the same principles, albeit in tighter quarters. They often wait in flooded forest margins during the wet season, where juvenile capybaras and birds pass overhead. The caiman's body is smaller, but its tactic identical. Drift, wait, lunge. At the peak of floodwaters, when fish are pushed into shallow pockets and mammals wander onto floating vegetation, the caiman becomes not just an ambush hunter, but a sculptor of terrain, choosing ambush points that funnel prey directly toward its snout. What separates crocodilians from most predators is their fusion of muscle and mathematics. While a lion must stalk or a cheetah must sprint, a crocodile does neither. It selects a spot, sometimes based on prevailing currents or the slope of the bank, and waits. They have been known to stay submerged in ambush posture for over an hour without surfacing. Some individuals fast for weeks, biding time for the perfect strike rather than wasting energy on near misses. Their heart rate's slow, metabolism drops, their brain is in full focus, and when they strike, they do so with the certainty of physics rather than desperation. Even birds aren't safe. Storks, herons, and egrets, with their spindly legs and high center of gravity, are ideal targets. Crocodiles calculate the trajectory of a downward peck or forward step, timing their lunge so precisely that the strike intersects with the prey's path at the point of impact. The margin for error is razor thin. One misfire can mean hours of waiting again. But success comes not from luck. It comes from anatomical engineering. In saltwater environments, such as estuaries in Southeast Asia or Australia, crocodiles add another layer of deception. They float along the surface with logs, disguising their backs beneath debris. At times, they'll even wait at night beneath fishing piers, drawn by the sound of struggling fish or careless footsteps. In some rare documented cases, saltwater crocodiles have been observed herding fish into shallow corners, using their bodies and tails as barriers, suggesting not just reactive hunting, but a rudimentary understanding of manipulation. In every ecosystem where they live, crocodilians have turned water into an extension of their own nervous system. It carries the signals of their prey, masks their scent and movement, and grants them a three-dimensional battlefield in which they are the undisputed masters. Their technique is not about chase or drama. It is about geometry, hydraulics, and silence. The ripple in the end is not the predator. It is the last warning, and by the time the prey notices it, it's already too late. Along the windswept shores of Argentina's Valdez Peninsula, the sea moves with an unnatural precision. The waves are not just breaking, they are calculating. In the distance, a seal pup bobs at the surf line, oblivious to the silent force converging just beyond the shallows. The beach is narrow, the tide low, and the light grey sand glistens with wet foam and broken shells. It looks like any ordinary coastal morning. But in this part of the world, the water holds minds that plan, coordinate, and kill with intention. This is where the orca, nature's most sophisticated marine predator, reveals its darkest weapon: intelligence engineered through water. Suddenly, the calm is broken. A black dorsal fin slices the surface with surgical finesse, not far from the shore. Another follows, then a third. They are ghosting just beneath the breakers, as if stalking the very boundary between two worlds, air and sea, land and death. The seal pup inches closer to the edge, curious, naive. It doesn't yet understand that these aren't random waves or wandering shadows. They are wolves of the ocean, and the hunt is already underway. With shocking speed, one orca turns parallel to the beach, accelerates, and torques its massive body sideways. A wall of water arcs up and forward, seemingly harmless, until it crashes into the sand with a surge that lifts the seal from its safety and drags it toward the sea. But before the wave recedes, the orca does something unthinkable. It hurls itself entirely out of the water, stranding its body onto the sand like a torpedo launched from the deep. With its jaws extended, it grabs the pup in one devastating bite, then uses the retreating wave to slide back into the ocean like a living missile. This behavior, intentional stranding, is among the rarest and most dangerous hunting strategies in the animal kingdom. Few predators willingly leave their environment to strike. And yet here in Patagonia, some orcas have mastered the physics of the beach, calculating angles, timing, and water momentum to create the perfect kill. Not every orca does it. Only a few pods exhibit this behavior, and within those pods, only a select few individuals specialize in it. It's a learned technique, passed from mother to calf, not through instinct but culture. Young orcas are observed practicing with seaweed or empty patches of shoreline, fine-tuning their approach before attempting it on live prey. This is more than predation. It's apprenticeship. Farther north, in the frozen reaches of the Arctic, orcas display a different form of watery warfare. Here, the battlefield is ice. In a world where everything is white and the only constants are cold and silence, seals find refuge on drifting floes, using them as platforms to rest and breed. For most predators, these ice islands are inaccessible fortresses, but orcas are not most predators. When a seal is spotted atop a floe, the pod forms a line several meters behind the target. With eerie synchronization, the orcas dive beneath the surface, then rise in unison, driving a deliberate swell toward the ice. The water lifts and destabilizes the floe, causing the seal to lose balance or forcing it to slide into the sea. The moment it does, the pod splits into formation, surrounding the disoriented animal with mathematical precision, each orca anticipating the other's movements with eerie clairvoyance. There is no thrashing, no frenzy, just a swift, suffocating efficiency. The seal is pulled under, silenced in seconds, and the hunt concludes with chilling order. Scientists have studied these behaviors for decades, and one truth remains constant. Orcas are not just hunters, they are strategists. Unlike most predators who rely on stealth or power alone, orcas use environmental manipulation as an extension of their own body. Water becomes a lever, a weapon, a partner. And unlike crocodiles or sharks, which act alone, orcas are collectivists. They operate like tactical units, using echolocation to communicate, assign roles, and coordinate movement over vast distances. It is predator choreography, invisible to the untrained eye, but lethal in execution. In the Pacific Northwest, orcas apply similar ingenuity to fish hunting. When pursuing herring or salmon, they work together to herd the schools into tight spheres, what marine biologists call bait balls. One group drives the fish upward from below, another patrols the perimeter, and a third takes turns diving in to strike. Bubbles are used as barriers, tail slaps as blunt force weapons. The fish are disoriented, compressed, and then decimated. It's a feeding style more akin to warfare than hunting. Yet for all their coordination and power, orcas exhibit a surprising restraint. They are among the few apex predators that do not always kill what they can. They are known to investigate boats, play with prey, and even let seals go unharmed after toying with them. In one documented case, a pod of orcas was observed tossing a seal pup among themselves for over half an hour, never delivering a killing bite. Was it training? Entertainment? Social bonding? The motivation remains unclear, but the act itself points to a level of self-awareness rarely seen in the animal kingdom. In many indigenous cultures, orcas are not feared, but revered. Among the Haida and Tlingit of the Pacific coast, orcas are believed to be the reincarnated spirits of great hunters, returned to the sea. The myth aligns eerily well with the observable facts. These animals operate with a foresight and cohesion that suggests not just instinct, but intention. They teach, adapt, and remember. Some pods have been recorded using entirely different vocal dialects, suggesting cultural divergence between orca communities across regions. These aren't just animals, they are societies. And within those societies, the manipulation of water becomes art. Not through brute force, but through understanding. An orca does not just react to waves, it creates them. It doesn't just swim through currents, it shapes them. And in doing so, it blurs the line between predator and engineer. The seal pup on the beach, the herring in the fjord, the scientist with the hydrophone, they're all watching water. But the orca, it's watching behavior, anticipating movement, adjusting the sea itself to fit the plan. The predator has learned to weaponize its world. And in doing so, it reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous force isn't the hunter's teeth or speed, but the mind behind the ripple. Beneath the gleaming surface of the open ocean, silence gives way to motion. Not noise in the human sense, but a pressure shift in the water, a tremor felt through the lateral lines of 1,000 tiny fish. Light filters down in beams, broken by the shadows of scattered plankton and drifting jellyfish. It looks like serenity, but tranquility in the pelagic zone is often a lie. The school of sardines gliding near the thermocline are packed tight in unison, responding not to panic but to habit, instincts honed by generations of avoiding death by geometry. Then, almost imperceptibly, the water begins to curve. From the abyssal blue comes a pulse of energy, a blur of streamlined bodies moving at speeds too fast for most eyes to track. It is not one predator, but many, synchronized, precise, and devastatingly efficient. Bottlenose dolphins break the edges first, not with violence, but with intention. They don't strike, they sculpt. Moving in arcs and half-circles, they begin to herd the sardines into a sphere, a tightening sphere, using controlled passes and sonic bursts. These dolphins are not chasing food, they are engineering a kill zone. Above, from the world of sky and light, seabirds plunge like darts into the forming chaos. Gannets fold their wings and drop from 50 meters high, knifing into the ocean at terminal velocity, bones and skulls specially adapted to absorb the impact. They don't wait for the bait ball to finish forming. They crash straight through it, snatching silver streaks on their way down. But they're just the first to exploit the spiral. Below, other forces are assembling. Sailfish arrive next, cutting across the currents like sharpened spears. Their bills, long and bladed, are not for stabbing but slashing, scattering and wounding small fish with precise sideways flicks. Contrary to popular image, sailfish don't attack the center. They skirt the perimeter, creating confusion. In doing so, they fracture the school's cohesion, making individuals easier to isolate. Their sails, when raised, are used as control surfaces, flattening currents, managing balance, and in some cases flaring outward to appear larger and redirect prey inward. All the while, the dolphins continue their spiral. The choreography is otherworldly. Some dive deep beneath the school, blowing vertical columns of bubbles to force fish upward. Others create horizontal rings, trapping the sardines in a cylinder of air they can't cross. This isn't just hunting, it's 3D fencing. Every pass compresses the school tighter, reducing escape angles, forcing oxygen-depleted fish to the surface. The vortex becomes both prison and pressure cooker. As the sardines ball tighter, their only hope, motion, turns against them. Their natural defense is to move as one, to confuse predators with flashing scales and unpredictable turns. But here, in the eye of the spiral, cohesion becomes constraint. The sheer density makes evasion impossible. One panicked turn becomes a tangle, the perimeter shrinks, the assassins close in. From below, tuna surge upward in vertical bursts, their bodies built for acceleration. Unlike the dolphins, they don't herd or slash. They pierce the bait ball like cannonballs, scooping 2 or 3 fish with each high-speed charge. Then they dive again, looping back around, turning the bait ball into a buffet line. This attack rhythm, the torpedo raids of tuna, the slashes of sailfish, the lunges of dolphins, cycles every few seconds. Dozens of species might participate in a single kill spiral, each taking a different role, all tuned to the same lethal tempo. The physics behind it are astonishing. Fluid dynamics, thermoclines, and even sonar all play roles. Fish caught inside the vortex suffer from multiple disadvantages: rapid oxygen depletion due to density, reduced vision from compressed bubbles, and vertigo from the spinning. Predator species exploit all of this. The vortex isn't just a barrier, it's a disorienting weapon. Movement becomes meaningless. No matter where the sardines turn, they are funneled back to the center. Escape is not prevented, it's neutralized. Even more fascinating is that this technique isn't instinctual in the simple sense. It's often learned and refined. Dolphins have been documented teaching younger individuals the spiral method over years, adjusting techniques based on water clarity, depth, and prey density. In some regions, different pods develop unique strategies. Off the coast of Norway, dolphins use fjord walls to trap herring, bouncing sonar off rock faces to create artificial containment. In the tropical Pacific, spinner dolphins use surface light to blind upward fleeing fish, creating silhouettes easy to strike from below. Every region has its version of the spiral, and every predator learns to read it. It's an ancient, decentralized system, like a natural warfare manual passed through the oceans without language or blueprint, only through observation, repetition, and survival. The bait ball doesn't last long, 10 minutes, maybe less. What begins as a cloud of 1,000 gleaming bodies ends in a slow, sinking snow of scales. Predators retreat, stomachs full. The ocean resets. Current resumes. Light bends once more across the surface as if nothing happened. But for the ocean's mid-tier predators, those without brute force or ambush, the spiral is salvation. It's how coordination replaces strength, how intelligence turns water into weapon, and how evolution rewards those who can move not just fast, but together. In a world without hiding places, where prey swims surrounded by 100 different threats, the vortex is proof that chaos can be engineered, and that death, in the sea, often moves in circles. In the heart of the Amazon basin, the line between land and water is blurred. Here, forests flood seasonally, turning pathways into channels and meadows into mirrored swamps. The canopy above still crackles with the familiar chorus of parrots and howler monkeys. But below, the ground has vanished into a warm, murky soup. Visibility is reduced to inches. Every footstep sinks. Every root is slick. The jungle doesn't roar here. It murmurs, squelches, and hides. This is the domain of slow death, where stillness conceals teeth and the floor itself cannot be trusted. As the water recedes in the dry season, it leaves behind a patchwork of ponds, mudflats, and isolated pools choked with vegetation. The oxygen levels drop. Fish fight for space. Turtles wallow in the sludge. For some, it's a desperate race to escape, but for others, this is the moment they've been waiting for. In the thick shallows, a shape lurks, half submerged, barely distinguishable from a tangle of reeds and rotting leaves. It's not a log. It's not a shadow. It's an anaconda, coiled and patient, its scaly green-black skin patterned with rosettes that mimic the broken light of muddy waters. Eyes and nostrils sit high on its head, adapted for surveillance while submerged. It doesn't move. It waits. A capybara steps into the pool, unaware that the true predator here is time. The ground beneath seems solid but shifts under weight. Its feet slip, water sloshing over its thighs. The hesitation lasts half a second too long. The strike is sudden but silent. The anaconda lunges, jaws opening impossibly wide, striking sideways, teeth hooking into fur. In one fluid motion, the snake coils, wrapping the prey in suffocating loops. Constriction begins, not by crushing bones as often misunderstood, but by shutting down circulation. With each exhale, the prey can't inhale again. Blood flow stops. Organs shut down. It's not a quick death, but a quiet one. Anacondas thrive in places where ambush is effortless and retreat impossible. Their entire body is a tool for water warfare. Unlike constrictors that live in dry environments and rely on strength alone, the anaconda uses mud as an anchor. When it grabs prey, it doesn't need to drag it far. The swamp helps pin the victim down. Escape becomes a frictionless struggle, a drowning panic that only deepens the grip. The water isn't just home, it's a restraint system. But snakes aren't the only ambush artists in these treacherous landscapes. Hidden beneath the black water pools of Southeast Asia and South America, massive catfish lie buried beneath a thin film of sediment. Their bodies are flattened, their whiskers tuned to the vibrations of even the tiniest motion. These aren't the sluggish bottom feeders of children's cartoons. In the right conditions, catfish can be aggressive hunters, lunging upward at frogs, birds, and rodents that come too close to the shoreline. Some species have been documented launching out of the water to catch pigeons mid-flight. In Europe, Wells catfish have adapted to ambush pigeons on riverbanks, lunging like crocodiles in miniature. They strike without warning, dragging prey under in a surge of mud and spray. What makes these environments so lethal isn't just the predators, but the terrain itself. In floodplains and marshes, the floor is deceptive. Patches of solid ground can suddenly liquefy, a result of decaying vegetation trapped beneath a crust of silt. A buffalo might step confidently into what looks like shallow mud, only to find its legs swallowed up to the knee, then the flank, then the chest. As the animal struggles, the vacuum strengthens. Flailing only accelerates the process. Each movement pulls it deeper. If the suction doesn't kill it, dehydration or opportunistic predators will. Crocodiles, caimans, and jaguars patrol the edges of these death traps, waiting for the trap to grow still. Even the smallest predators exploit this hidden world. In stagnant pools rich with detritus, leeches thrive, not just the tiny hitchhikers of horror films, but large aquatic leeches that detect prey through chemical trails and heat gradients. They move with surprising speed through water, wrapping around amphibians and even fish. Their bite is painless, masked by an anesthetic secretion, and their saliva contains anticoagulants that prevent clotting. Blood flows uninterrupted, while the prey remains unaware. Some leech species have evolved to stay latched on for days, growing fat in the murk, anchored to a host too slow or sick to resist. At the micro level, ambush takes on strange forms. Dragonfly nymphs and diving beetles, despite their size, are apex predators of the muck world. Dragonfly nymphs launch extendable jaws at lightning speed, faster than a blink, impaling small fish and tadpoles with needle-like teeth. They hide in silt, waiting for the flicker of movement, then strike in a blur. Their feeding technique is hydraulic. Water is forced through their abdomens to propel their bodies forward in a quick burst, a natural jet engine for underwater assault. These predators don't need size to dominate. They use biomechanics perfected over hundreds of millions of years. The tragedy and genius of these swampland ecosystems is that death doesn't announce itself. There is no dramatic chase, no lion's roar or shark's fin cutting the water. Here, everything dies quietly. A hoof sinks too deep. A ripple betrays location. A warm patch of water signals a pulse. In these worlds, you don't need to outrun danger. You just need to avoid misplacing your next step. And when your foot hits the wrong patch of floor, it isn't just the mud that pulls you down, it's the life within it. Flooded terrain teaches predators patience. It teaches prey paranoia, and it teaches that sometimes the greatest threat isn't what's above the surface, but what lies just beneath it, motionless, buried, and waiting for the world to come too close. The ground in these places is never just ground, it is predator. Twice a day the ocean exhales. The tide retreats from the shore like a beast pulling back into its lair, revealing a glistening world in between, the intertidal zone. What was once submerged becomes exposed. Rocks, kelp beds, tide pools and sandbars emerge like forgotten architecture. It's a liminal place, where neither land nor sea dominates. And while many see it as a place of shells, crabs and seaweed, the predators of this realm see something different. They see a battlefield governed by a clock older than the sun's arc, tidal rhythm. Along British Columbia's rugged coastline, where forested cliffs plunge straight into salt water, grey wolves descend from the trees. They are not chasing deer or rabbits. They are watching the tide. As the water ebbs, mussels, barnacles and sea stars are left clinging to rocks. Small fish get trapped in tidal pools. Seals loaf on newly exposed rocks. The wolves move with eerie confidence across slick stone, their paws slipping just slightly on algae-covered boulders, but their eyes locked on every crevice and motion. They are not scavengers, they are foragers and hunters, adapted to this ephemeral edge. These coastal wolves have learned that timing is everything. Low tide is opportunity. They navigate the wet labyrinths of the shore like marine mammals, even swimming between islands to track the tide's progression. Their diet, unusually high in seafood, includes salmon during runs, seals when vulnerable, and herring roe scraped from rocks. Some even dig for clams using their paws, demonstrating a tactile intelligence rarely seen in land predators. And when the tide rises, they vanish into the forest again, leaving only paw prints in the wet sand behind. Few predators on land use the sea's heartbeat to such effect. Further north and inland, in the tidal rivers of Alaska and Kamchatka, brown bears gather at precise points along the current. As the tide pushes upstream and then retreats, it triggers one of the most spectacular events in the natural world, the salmon run. Thousands of fish, driven by reproductive compulsion, surge into rivers, swimming against the flow, leaping up rapids, and thrashing through shallows. For the bears, this is more than feeding. It is calculation. They know the routes, the depth thresholds, the bottlenecks. A bear doesn't just stand in any stream and wait, it positions itself at natural choke points, narrow shallows beneath waterfalls, and especially during tidal ebb when fish are forced into tighter channels. These bears have developed remarkable techniques. Some swipe fish from mid-air as they leap. Others pin them to the stream bed or crush them against rocks. A few even position themselves downstream of chaotic spawning pools and wait for exhausted or injured fish to drift past. It's not about strength. It's about placement, timing, tidal knowledge. The same bear may return to the same spot at the same time each year, synchronized with lunar pull and salmon biology, as if consulting an invisible calendar etched in water. In South America, another predator walks the edge of salt and soil with equal confidence. The jaguar, typically a creature of dense rainforest and riverbanks, also stalks the coastal mangroves of Brazil's Pantanal and northern estuaries. During low tide, as the mangrove roots are exposed, crabs, frogs, and even small caimans venture out. The jaguar follows, its massive paws spreading its weight evenly across the mud, preventing it from sinking too deeply. It moves with eerie grace, navigating twisted roots and slippery flats in near silence. Unlike other big cats, the jaguar doesn't shy from water. It embraces it. Some individuals have been recorded stalking through waist-high brine, their spotted coats blending seamlessly into the mottled shadows of the mangrove canopy. At low tide, they patrol the newly revealed flats, ears attuned to the clicking of crab claws or the splash of a stranded fish. A sudden pounce, a crunch, and the water takes something back. The brilliance of these tidal predators lies not in their raw power, but in their understanding of cycles. The ocean is not random. Its tides are governed by the moon's pull, by celestial rhythm. High tide conceals, floods, protects. Low tide exposes, isolates, and traps. Predators that learn this can turn tide tables into feeding schedules. What looks like retreat is in fact ambush. What seems like opportunity for the prey, a quick scuttle across the flats or a sunning session on a sandbar, is a carefully timed illusion. Even species not often associated with shorelines have learned to exploit this system. Raccoons along estuarine coasts know when to come. They pour through exposed mussel beds and overturned rocks, sometimes gorging on creatures 3 times their normal inland diet. Ospreys use tidal patterns to pinpoint shallow water for easier fish kills. In tidal marshes, egrets and herons time their stalking for when small fish are pushed into channels or stranded pools. Across continents and species, the message is the same. When the tide pulls back, the trap springs forward. On a biological level, the intertidal zone is one of Earth's most dynamic ecosystems. It is constantly reshaped, inundated, and exposed. Life here must be flexible, amphibious, and highly tolerant of change. Prey species like mudskippers, crabs, and shorefish have evolved rapid response reflexes and camouflage strategies. But the predators have evolved something more powerful: awareness. The ability to predict, to time, and to read the landscape not as it is, but as it will become in minutes. The ocean does not attack with speed. It attacks with certainty. Tides change with absolute regularity. They give and take, open and close. Predators that align with this rhythm gain the advantage of inevitability. It is no longer about chase or combat. It is about presence, being in the right place at the right moment, knowing that the water itself will help seal the outcome. When the tide begins to rise again, the coastal wolves retreat into the forest. The bears withdraw from the narrowing shallows. The jaguar vanishes into the mangrove maze. The kill zone is submerged once more. What remains is calm, the deceptive kind. The shoreline looks innocent again, safe. But beneath the surface, the countdown has already begun. The ocean will exhale again, and when it does, the predators will return, on time, on target, and in tune with the water that feeds them. In the parched lands of the Sonoran Desert, the silence is brittle. Dry air presses against the earth like a weight, and the soil cracks underfoot in brittle mosaic patterns. Dust clings to everything: cacti, stones, the bones of long-dead creatures. It's a landscape defined by absence. Water is a myth whispered in the rustle of distant winds. Nothing moves during midday, but above, the sky is changing. Clouds have gathered in a high, boiling mass, grey on the bottom, white on top, rolling with the slow menace of a growing storm. The wind picks up, twisting grit into the air. The first drop hits like a drumbeat on a sun-bleached rock, and then, with no warning at all, the flood comes. It's not a gentle rain, it's a rupture. The sky tears open in sudden violence, dumping more water in an hour than the land has seen in months. Gullies become rivers, roads turn to currents. Dry stream beds, arroyos, awaken in an instant, water barreling down their narrow channels with the rage of gravity and pressure combined. This is not a gradual rise. It is a wall of brown water laced with debris, sticks, and sediment, sweeping through the terrain like an uninvited guest, flipping over every table in its path. And as it churns across the landscape, it reveals what has been hidden. Life erupts. From burrows and cracks, insects spill into the chaos. Beetles, grasshoppers, and crickets scramble for higher ground. Frogs, dormant for months, spring to life, literally. Spadefoot toads, buried beneath the earth in a kind of heat-induced stasis, dig their way out with desperate precision, surfacing in time to breed in newly formed puddles. The transformation is instantaneous. A desert of silence becomes a pulsing, croaking, chittering festival of motion. And predators, tuned to this brief explosion, arrive right on time. In the midst of the deluge, sidewinder rattlesnakes slither into action. These snakes have adapted to ambush hunting in sand, but they're no less efficient in mud. They curl up beside flood-stilled pools and pick off frogs attempting to breed. Their strikes are fast, their venom potent, and the chaos of the flood dulls the prey's natural caution. Insects flung from their homes are seized by desert scorpions and whip-tailed lizards. Even tarantulas, often sluggish in the dry heat, move quickly now, seizing disoriented prey flushed from cover. The predators didn't need to chase the food. The water brought it to their doorstep. Further downslope, the temporary rivers created by flash floods pour into shallow basins, where fish eggs, dormant for months, hatch in warm, oxygen-rich conditions. Popfish, killifish, and even small catfish suddenly appear in places that, just days earlier, were indistinguishable from stone. They swim in circles, feeding and spawning with frantic urgency. But their freedom is short-lived. Herons and egrets, seemingly summoned by scent or radar, glide overhead and land in silence. With surgical precision, they strike into the shallows, swallowing entire fish in single gulps. The birds weren't passing through by chance. They were waiting for this moment, weeks, sometimes months, because flash floods are as predictable to them as the sunrise. In Namibia's Kuiseb River, or the American Southwest, even larger predators adjust to these seasonal upheavals. Hyenas, not traditionally associated with floods, patrol dry riverbeds after storms. The logic is simple. Flooding flushes out everything. Carcasses trapped in debris piles, tortoises overturned by the surge, rodents that fail to outrun the water. For opportunistic feeders like the hyena, every downpour is a buffet. And in places where humans rarely look, like beneath the overhangs of desert cliffs, raptors perch, scanning the chaos for movement. The moment the rain stops, kestrels and hawks dive into the receding flow, grabbing mice and lizards attempting to scramble from the flood's edge. Even in jungled highlands like those of northern Thailand or eastern India, where steep terrain turns rain into cascade, flash floods trigger a feeding spree. Monsoon bursts transform dry bamboo gullies into roaring slides of mud and water. Birds like serpent eagles hover near, watching as small snakes and amphibians are carried down. Monitor lizards, excellent swimmers and tireless scavengers, follow the flow for drowned prey. The movement of water acts like sonar, signaling a window of opportunity that will close within hours. But not all hunters stand above the flood. Some ride it. In Australia and South America, fishing spiders and water-walking arachnids use their legs to surf over the surface of floodwaters, propelled by wind and tension. These spiders are not passive passengers. They hunt while in motion, their front legs feeling for vibrations, snapping up insects that float by. It's not chaos to them. It's a conveyor belt. At the microbial level, flash floods also trigger predation. As stagnant pools mix with new water, bacteria and protozoa explode in number. These micro-hunters consume detritus and smaller organisms in bursts that mirror the feeding frenzies above. The entire ecosystem, from the smallest single-celled predator to the largest carnivore, operates in a kind of frenzied harmony. Predation synchronized with precipitation. The key to all of it is timing. All. Unlike tidal zones or seasonal migrations, flash floods are less predictable in date, but utterly consistent in pattern. Animals in these regions don't just react to rain, they anticipate it. Behavior shifts days before the first cloud appears. Burrow-dwelling frogs change position. Birds begin scouting riverbeds. Snakes surface from underground shelters. The land becomes tense, humming with silent preparation. And when the sky breaks, it's not a surprise. It's a signal. These brief storms don't just bring water. They bring a shifting of the rules. Territory becomes irrelevant. Stealth is no longer the priority. Position is. The prey are stunned, slowed or swept into the open. And the predators, for once, do not need to chase. They only need to be ready. The storm does the rest. When the flood subsides, the landscape returns to stillness. The gullies dry, the frogs bury themselves again, and the desert resumes its scorched hush. But the memory lingers. In the bones scattered across the wash, in the bent grass along the water's path, in the satisfied bellies of those who knew how to wait. For in a world where survival often means endurance, flash floods reward those who act fast, strike first, and understand that sometimes the best hunter is the storm itself. In the stillness of dawn, the surface of a lake becomes a perfect lie. It mirrors the world above with such precision that sky and earth appear duplicated. Trees rise twice, once in wood, once in water. A heron stands ankle-deep at the edge, motionless, as if unsure which reality it truly inhabits. Not a single ripple disturbs the reflection. And that's the trap. In nature, few things are more deceptive than water when it pretends to be invisible. For millions of years, evolution has shaped the senses of animals to detect threats through motion, scent, and sound. But sight, the dominant sense in most daylight species, can betray its user when facing the unique physics of water. Unlike soil or stone, water is a moving mirror, bending light, shifting angles, and cloaking the creatures beneath. It reflects the sky while refracting what's below, distorting depth, shape, and speed all at once. Predators have learned to weaponize this distortion, and prey often become victims not of speed or strength, but of misjudged angles and optical illusions. In the floodplains of Central Africa, a baboon trots across a log that stretches between two muddy banks. To the primate's eyes, the water below appears calm and shallow. The reflection of the canopy creates an illusion of depth that seems safe, until the baboon slips, hits the surface, and instantly realizes the truth. What appeared to be knee-deep muck is a hidden channel, concealing the body of a patient crocodile. The strike is immediate. The illusion becomes a death sentence. There was no roar, no chase, just a fall, a splash, and silence. Light behaves differently in water than in air. It bends, scatters, and reflects depending on angle, clarity, and the observer's position. This phenomenon, refraction, is why a fish below the surface never appears quite where it is. For predators like kingfishers and ospreys, the ability to compensate for this shift is crucial. They must train themselves to strike not at the image, but slightly off-center, accounting for water's distortion. Young birds often fail at this repeatedly, misjudging the exact location of prey. Only through learned correction do they master the angle of entry. Yet, for every predator that adapts to this, there is a prey species that dies because it couldn't. Not all victims of this deception are prey. Some are hunters themselves. In the Arctic, glaucous gulls are known to dive at reflections on tide pools, mistaking mirrored fish for reality. When the water is clear but highly reflective, like on bright days with low sun, the line between image and object becomes razor thin. The gull's beak punches into nothing, or worse, hits the surface with such force that the bird stuns itself, bobbing awkwardly while the real fish darts away untouched. Even the predators sometimes fall for the trap. But some use the illusion as the trap. In the Amazon basin, the archerfish hunts insects by firing water droplets from its mouth, knocking bugs off overhanging branches. To do this, it must solve an optical equation in real time, accounting for both the height of the insect and the angle of refraction caused by the water's surface. It spits not where the insect appears to be, but where it truly is, factoring in distortion with uncanny precision. What appears to be a random squirt is actually a ballistic calculation more precise than many human-made targeting systems. Now shift to another biome. In Australia, freshwater turtles lie buried beneath shallow creek beds, their nostrils just above the surface, motionless among reeds. Overhead, a kangaroo moves cautiously, assessing the width of the water. To its eye, the reflection of the far bank looks closer than it is. It jumps and miscalculates. The gap is wider than it appeared, and the landing is off. It crashes into the water with a splash, struggling to regain footing. In those precious seconds, opportunistic predators like goannas or even hidden snakes waiting along the bank strike. Here, the reflection didn't hide the predator. It altered the terrain. Even herbivores exploit optical deception. Moose wading into Arctic lakes have been observed using the mirror-like surface to spot movement behind them without turning their heads. The mirrored image of the sky acts as a primitive warning system, but it's imperfect. Wolves, hunting along these lake shores in winter, sometimes charge across thin ice, relying on overcast skies to flatten reflections and hide their movement. They blur into the landscape until the final moments. The prey spots them not by color or sound, but by the break in the reflection, a ripple that arrives too late. Some of the most fatal misjudgments occur not when animals look into the water, but when they think it isn't there. Birds flying over glassy lakes have been documented diving straight into the surface, mistaking it for sky. These impacts can be fatal. On rare windless days, entire flocks of starlings or swifts have been known to crash en masse into still water, duped by a false horizon. To them, the mirrored sky didn't appear suspicious. It looked like freedom. The problem intensifies at night. In the moonlight, reflections become ghosts, half-seen shapes hovering just beneath the surface. Nocturnal predators like fishing bats use echolocation, but even they must rely on surface patterns to spot movement. The fish, in turn, hide beneath floating leaves or near banks, where shadow disrupts the mirrored field. What begins as visual camouflage becomes a strategic positioning system. The reflection isn't a barrier, it's a chessboard, and the pieces shift with every breeze. In swamps and rice paddies across Southeast Asia, humans have long observed how cobras and kraits move across water at night, using the glint of stars on the surface as both guidance and concealment. The glimmer breaks over their body only slightly, giving them a silhouette almost impossible to detect until too late. Farmers walking dikes in moonlight have been bitten simply because the snake looked like water. And beneath it all, the water remains the same, silent, reflective, and deceptive. It offers no intention, no malice. But to animals dependent on their eyes for survival, it's a constant puzzle. One misread can lead to injury, isolation, or death. In nature, mistakes often come at full cost. And in the shimmering lie of water, those mistakes are easy to make. Predators and prey alike learn to read the surface differently, not just as barrier or habitat, but as illusion. The smartest adapt, the fastest survive. But for the rest, death arrives not as a roar or a strike, but as a simple miscalculation. A jump too far, a shadow missed, a reflection believed. At the edge of a winding river in Botswana's Okavango Delta, reeds sway gently in the mid-morning breeze. The surface of the water shimmers beneath a curtain of dragonflies, its calm betraying nothing of the violence beneath. On the opposite bank, hoofprints press into the wet clay, sharp, recent, impala tracks. A trail of desperation leading straight to the water's edge, where the prints vanish, scattered in chaos. There are no remains, no blood, no signs of a kill, just ripples, and yet a predator succeeded here. Not by speed, not by force, but by submersion. In this silent struggle, it is the river itself that finished the job. Predators in water-rich habitats have long understood that water is more than scenery. It is leverage. Not all hunts end in bloodshed on dry land. Some end in gasping lungs and flooded nostrils. Here, water becomes weapon, and drowning is not an accident, it is strategy. Among mammals especially, this method is brutal, efficient, and rarely seen in full. But when it happens, it is cold and calculated, honed by generations of observation and precision. In South America's Amazon basin, the giant otter reigns with deceptive charm. Sleek, expressive, and often seen in playful groups, they appear harmless until the hunt begins. When a shoal of armored catfish drifts too close to their territory, the otters close in with military coordination. They don't simply grab their prey, they smother it. Once a fish is caught, the otter presses it against the riverbed or clutches it in a vice-like grip while twisting its own body around the prey, making sure gills are pinned shut. Struggling fish are held until the final twitch fades. It's not a chaotic feeding frenzy, it's a calculated execution, fast, quiet, absolute. Not far away in the Pantanal's flooded forests, another predator uses drowning with unsettling proficiency, the jaguar. Most known for crushing skulls with bone-piercing jaws, some jaguars take a different route when targeting large prey near water, capybaras, caimans, even small deer. The jaguar will wait near the waterline, hidden beneath hanging branches or in tall reeds, before launching an explosive ambush. If the prey bolts into the water, the jaguar follows, not to catch and drag it back, but to keep it in. Once in the shallows, it doesn't rely on fangs alone. It uses weight. Clamping down on the neck or snout, the jaguar submerges both itself and the struggling animal, pinning it until the thrashing turns to floating. The kill is asphyxiation, made possible by terrain the predator has chosen deliberately. On the African continent, lions, despite their preference for open plains, also practice the drowning method when geography allows. In the wetter corners of the Okavango, some prides have adapted to stalking buffalo and lechwe through swampy terrain. When the charge begins, The prey often retreats into channels it thinks will provide cover or escape. But lions follow through the water. Once contact is made, it's not a chase. It's a dragging match. One lion on the shoulders, another biting at the haunches, and one objective: submerge the prey. Sometimes they drag their victim into deeper pools and stand over it, pushing it under with their chest and forelimbs, letting the weight of their bodies do the killing while avoiding dangerous horns. In such moments, the lions aren't hunters, they're anchors. Wolves, too, have displayed surprising awareness of this technique in parts of the world where lakes and rivers intersect their range. In North America, grey wolves hunting elk or moose near marshes sometimes use coordinated pushes to drive their quarry into deep water. The goal isn't to isolate, it's to tire. Elk forced to swim lose momentum rapidly, and once fatigue sets in, wolves enter the water themselves, circling until one leaps onto the haunches and begins pulling backward. Drowning isn't immediate, it's prolonged. But as panic overtakes the prey and footing disappears, the wolves drag it down, sometimes holding the snout beneath the surface to finish the job. It's a method born not of brute power, but group coordination and spatial awareness. This behavior is not limited to mammals. Birds have learned to drown their prey with equal ruthlessness. The African fish eagle, for instance, often grabs fish too large to carry. Rather than drop it, it pins the fish against the water's surface and waits. The talons are embedded deep. The fish exhausts itself. Oxygen dwindles. Then the eagle pulls the now limp prize ashore for consumption. Even herons and storks have been seen holding frogs under with their beaks, not biting, not tearing, just holding, until the resistance stops. The moment the kicking legs fall still, the feast begins. In some of the world's harshest environments, even scavengers exploit drowning tactics. Hyenas, when hunting in flooded savannas during the rainy season, have been observed using the water's depth to their advantage. A targeted calf or antelope driven into swampy ground may suddenly find itself immobilized, unable to run at speed. The hyenas harass it, keeping it off balance, nipping, driving it into deeper mud. There, where footing is lost, the struggle ends not with a throat bite, but with lungs filling slowly as the prey is pulled below the surface. What begins as panic ends in stillness, again without a single drop of blood. Even reptiles use suffocation as a core tactic. The alligator snapping turtle lies motionless in murky ponds, its worm-like tongue luring fish into striking range. When the bite lands, the jaws don't just crush, they trap. A fish held inside the turtle's beak cannot breathe. There is no water exchange, no gill movement. Within seconds, the fish stops thrashing. Similarly, caimans and crocodiles often don't kill by bite alone. They hold prey underwater, waiting for the panic to subside. Sometimes they perform the death roll, but not to tear, simply to disorient and drown. Drowning in nature is not an accident of circumstance. It is a tool wielded consciously by those who understand the physics of fear. It does not require strength alone, but control, timing, pressure. It's used when prey is too large to subdue with teeth, when the terrain offers an advantage, or when direct attack would be too risky. In those moments, predators let the water do the hard work. What makes this method so haunting is its silence. There is no roar, no crunch, no scream echoing through the forest. Just bubbles, ripples, and eventual stillness. And afterward, nothing. A river that looks no different than it did before. A pond that hides what just happened beneath a skin of reeds and floating leaves. The weapon leaves no mark. Nature doesn't favor a particular technique. It rewards whatever works. And drowning, dark, efficient, and invisible, is one of its most effective methods. It's not flashy, it's not fast, but it is final. Rain used to be a rhythm, seasonal, predictable, part of the ecological score that shaped migrations and rebirths. But now, in many corners of the world, water comes not as a song, but as a flood. Fast, violent, relentless. It doesn't nourish, it overwhelms. Rivers break their banks not once a year, but with increasing regularity. Coastal towns vanish beneath storm surges that were once freak occurrences. Entire ecosystems are submerged before the species within them can adapt. In this new age, water is not simply habitat or hunting ground. It is disruption. It is migration. It is expansion. And as the world drowns, so do the boundaries between predator and prey, between wild and human, between nature's balance and nature's chaos. In southern Bangladesh, where monsoon rains once sustained the fertile edge of the Sundarbans, entire villages now sit underwater for days at a time. The sea is creeping inward, inch by inch, storm by storm. With that surge comes a predator long feared in these parts, the saltwater crocodile. Larger, more aggressive, and more mobile than its freshwater cousins, it now glides through flooded rice paddies, swims between homes, and waits at the edges of submerged roads. In the past, its hunting was confined to tidal creeks and mangrove swamps. Now, with each seasonal cyclone, it follows the expanding water inland. For the people and livestock forced to wade through these floodwaters, the predator is no longer out there in the wild. It is on the doorstep. These are not isolated events. Across the globe, predators are learning to follow the water, not just to survive, but to exploit. In the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey in Texas, local residents spotted bull sharks swimming through flooded streets in low-lying coastal neighborhoods. These sharks, typically coastal hunters, had followed storm surges miles inland, moving through canals, drainage systems, and parking lots turned estuaries. They weren't there by mistake. Bull sharks are among the few species capable of living in both salt and fresh water. Their kidneys adapt to different salinity levels within hours. In a warming world filled with unstable coastlines, they are uniquely positioned to thrive. In Australia, heavy rains across Queensland and New South Wales have produced scenes of snakes slithering through flooded living rooms. Eastern brown snakes, deadly, aggressive, and lightning fast, have been observed using submerged homes as elevated platforms for hunting. Rats, fleeing the waterlogged sewers and burrows, seek dry refuge, and the snakes follow. The predator-prey dynamic hasn't changed. The stage has. Houses become caves. Furniture becomes cover. Floodwater rewrites the map, and with it the rules of engagement. In Central and South America, army ants, usually bound to forest floor operations, are seen forming floating rafts of their own bodies during heavy flooding events, drifting en masse across rivers to reach new territory. These swarms, which already overwhelm any small creature in their path, now move as mobile, amphibious kill units. What was once a terrestrial scourge has become semi-aquatic, adapting within hours to turn flooding into an advantage. Even insects are rethinking their reach. But perhaps the most dramatic transformation is not in the behavior of a single species, but in the collapse of barriers. As fresh water mixes with salt water, as rivers bleed into cities, as drier zones become seasonally submerged, animals are being forced into closer proximity with one another, and with humans. In the Mekong Delta, for example, rice fields have become arenas for encounters between invasive snakehead fish and native species. These fish, equipped with primitive lungs, can crawl over land during floods and establish themselves in new ecosystems where native fish are not prepared to compete. The predator is no longer local. It's foreign, fast-breeding, and armed with tools its new neighbors have never evolved to counter. Meanwhile, rising sea levels have turned mangrove forests, once a stronghold of crab-eating macaques, into watery traps. These primates, increasingly short on dry ground and accessible food, are venturing into water more frequently. Some have adapted, learning to dive for shellfish or raid coastal villages. In rare cases, they've been observed stealing fish directly from the mouths of birds or scavenging carcasses brought in by the tide. These are not traditional behaviors. They are innovations driven by desperation. Predators in these changing environments are not just reacting, they are learning. The lines between aquatic and terrestrial are eroding, not metaphorically, but literally. This new battlefield is uncharted, a terrain of unpredictability where species are pushed out of old habits and into new strategies. Crocodiles no longer rely solely on ambush. They patrol corridors of floodwater that extend deep into human settlements. Sharks don't just cruise coral reefs. They follow rainfall, tides, and topographic shifts created by broken levees and eroded coastlines. Snakes ride currents, otters climb walls, ants float. The effects ripple beyond ecology. In many regions, the presence of new predators alters prey behavior in ways that cascade through the ecosystem. Animals that once grazed freely now avoid former feeding grounds. Migratory patterns shift. Breeding is delayed or relocated. And when prey vanish or adapt faster than expected, the predator must also change or perish. In this sense, even the hunter is hunted. By time, by chaos, by the vanishing reliability of its environment. It's not just that predators are becoming more dangerous. It's that danger itself is becoming less predictable. The boundaries that once kept ecosystems stable, seasonal rains, consistent shorelines, fixed migration paths, are collapsing under the weight of a destabilized climate. Floods come earlier, hit harder, and stay longer. Predators follow those surges not because they want to, but because they must. And when they arrive, they do not always return to where they came from. Some stay, some thrive. Some become permanent residents of a place that never intended to host them. This is the frontier of ecological warfare, not between predator and prey, but between stability and survival. Water, once life-giving and cyclical, has become unpredictable and strategic. It transports killers, it opens new front lines, and in many cases it becomes the battleground itself. What we're witnessing is not just adaptation, it's redefinition. In a world where the climate no longer plays by its own rules, nature is adjusting its tactics, and predators, opportunistic, observant, ruthless, are leading that shift. They are no longer just shaped by the environment. They are shaping it in return, exploiting the floods, surfing the chaos, and redrawing the map of fear. The battlefield has expanded, and in this rising tide, no ground is truly safe anymore.